Yeah, just call the meeting to order. We call the meeting to order and we'll act on the agenda.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public comment? We don't have any public? So. Draft zoning regulations.
I have to say that I walked out of the last meeting. I thought I didn't realize I was as confused as I was. Because I'm not really sure what we did. Because some of it was an executive session, and I think we had not an executive session at the end, but apparently we left it that the zoning committee was gonna, with the help of a municipal grant or a planning grant, whatever we can get, that we were gonna put a short-term rental conditional use possibility into the zoning.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that, I don't know if we voted or we just talked about it, but I'm not so clear that that's something I support, even though if it was voted on, I understand that's too late, but I guess I feel that in view of everything that I think about short-term rentals, that I still would like to figure out a way for the townspeople to vote somehow before we actually enact any short-term rental conditional uses or anything else, because it became pretty clear, like unlike some other towns, Andover hasn't really experienced a lot of conversion to short-term rentals of long-term rentals. At least I'm not aware of it. It seems like we mostly have short-term rentals that vacation houses have been turning into short-term rentals, and some local people, some residents have short-term rentals in order to help pay their expenses. And I was just thinking after the last meeting that, the town's obviously in trouble financially, and clearly we're going to be raising taxes next year to cover our municipal expenses, and the state is raising taxes, and I just feel like I don't want to be a part of raising more obstacles to people being able to raise money on their private properties. But the thing is I also don't want to impose that view on anybody. What I'd like to do is somehow set it up so that we could have a vote as to whether the select board should or the zoning committee should pursue putting up some kind of regulating it in some way. And if it's too late for me to say that, then that's too bad for me. But I don't know if that's clear.
Yeah, we did vote to put a conditional use in, which I think we really have to, because right now you're operating illegally. Because they're a business and there is no use, conditional use in your file.
I think I don't know if we did that in executive session or after we came out of executive session, so I'm not sure. I don't actually remember, so I don't know if it's something that would have to be done in public. And then also, I don't really, according to my understanding from the lawyer, I think she said very clearly that we're not obligated to do anything.
No, we're not.
So if we're not obligated to do anything, I guess it's foggy in my mind why we would be obligated to make short-term rentals a conditional use. I would feel obligated to follow the directive of a non-binding vote in town, but I'm not very eager to just set something up. And I think that was a draft, an idea for a draft short-term rental conditional use rather than actually voting to put it in. But as I said, I feel I realized I was pretty confused after the meeting. I don't know.
We're not obligated ultimately to do anything, but I think really we do have to put a regulation on the conditional use.
So did the feeling at the end of that last meeting is that we would make it the short-term rentals a conditional use, which would involve, now, would there be legacy short-term rentals, or would anybody who had already been doing short-term rentals have to apply for?
Yeah, you'd have to.
So it wouldn't be like some legacy people and some new people. And
they would have a certain amount of grace period to get their conditional use in, but.
So in a condition, to become a conditional use, there would be a process where neighboring landowners would be informed that there would be a hearing, and the owner or the owner's representative would somehow, or Zoom or whatever, would have to appear before the zoning board. And then neighbors or concerned parties of any type could speak up. And then the zoning board would decide whether to grant the conditional use permit.
If it's a conditional use, they pretty much have to grant it, because it is a conditional use. It's a use that has conditions attached to it.
And that's why you have to have the definition of the short-term rental. That was what Gary was talking about. You have to have the definition so that people understand what the conditional use of a short-term rental is when they apply for it.
But an actual registry would be something that would have to be decided by the select board making an ordinance, right? The conditional, if there's a condition, if short-term rentals are made an official conditional use, that doesn't include making a registry. It just
that goes hand in hand when they.
It'll go on the books as a conditional use.
And then if they pay their fee, they're legal operating short-term rental then, right? On the registry.
You wouldn't have a yearly payment or anything. Mm-hmm. It would just be in the books that that's a conditional use for that property.
Right, so that's different.
There would
So you're
be
correct.
a conditional use
Correct.
attached to their property, and it stays with the property regardless of ownership.
And then
What the lawyer pointed out was the select board, if you wanted some kind of, whether it be curfews, whether it be whatever kind of rules, if you wanted a registry, that has to be done by ordinance, which is the select board's piece. And you don't have to, but if the board as a group wanted to have certain things in place, that has to be done by ordinance. The zoning regulations are in place.
I mean, I'm feeling a little dense about it, but the fact is I still don't really understand why the short-term rental, would long-term rentals become a conditional use?
They're already listed.
That just goes with
They're already listed as a use,
okay.
permitted use.
In the
Yeah.
town plan or zoning? Okay, well, I think I made a mistake by voting for it, but, because I think that I would still prefer before we set up more obstacles, to just doing what you feel you need to do on your property, that I would have preferred to have some kind of town-wide vote, even if it's not binding. So that's fine. I just feel like I wanted to say that.
Yeah.
And don't forget, people will be, because you all committed to, voting on
anything,
a draft
anything,
regulation document.
Right.
We said that whether it goes through zoning or an ordinance, that we put it out for the.
So you're still gonna go through a non-binding vote process.
Right.
With the
It'll
town.
just be for the whole document, which will include
Mhm.
the short-term rentals as a conditional use.
So that would be sort of a pity if somebody wanted to vote down the whole thing just because of that tiny little
Well, the
section.
conditional use is necessary, like Chris said. Every short-term rental that's operating in Andover is technically operating illegally because there is no conditional use for that. in the zoning, correct?
Right.
So that we're understanding that all the same way. And that has been brought to us several times by several different residents that that's what's going on, and they're businesses. I can tell you, a lot of them are, and that gentleman that owns one, he said his is an LLC, his property.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're businesses, they are. There's no way around it, whether you rent it out 1 month a year or you rent it out 12 months a year. Not as a short term, I understand long terms are different.
Why did the lawyer, can you just explain to me, why did the lawyer say that we're not really obligated to take any action then?
Because the state is not making it mandatory.
Right.
The state's not making you do not have to regulate short-term rentals in any town as of right now. This that's what she said, the state. And with our zoning the way it is, it reads that they're businesses and they're not signed up as a conditional use. Is that it's not like we spoke about other towns. Some towns have no zoning, so they really can do nothing. They don't have to worry about it. A town with no zoning, if they don't want to have any restrictions on short-term rentals, they have nothing binding. But to have it in Andover, the way ours read, they should have a conditional use.
Yeah.
But that's what she was speaking of, is that the state is not saying by January 1st of this year, you have to have your regulations for short-term rental, because there's no state regulations for them yet, which who knows what's coming in the future.
They should.
Because that made it a mess for all the towns. I mean, everybody can make their own.
Anytime you make regulations town by town, it becomes a mess. And you don't get compliance because the people can't keep up with the compliance for all the different towns.
So this isn't like so there's no workaround to that? This is another question that I guess I could go to the zoning board to ask, but does Andover have, I know a lot of, the zoning was put in the 1970s,
Yeah.
I assume. I was just reading in some article somewhere, do we have more zoning in general, than we really need? For instance, if I want to renovate the inside of a cabin I could do it, but if I want to just do anything on the outside of it, even though it's well within my property, apparently I have to get a building permit. But I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of the zoning that was put on in the 1970s, according to my understanding, land was very cheap and people were very worried about a lot of new development. And a lot of the development that some of the towns were worried about actually never probably really came to pass. And I'm not on the zoning board, so.
Well, just an example of why it works. I mean, you look at the older houses when there wasn't zoning, how close they are to the road. It made sense then. Now setbacks and boundary from property lines for buildings make sense, because I agree with building off of a property line, because you don't buy a piece of property to
Of course
look at someone's building, right? I mean, that close.
Yeah.
And those are just an example of the zoning that I feel like that those regulations work well.
Towns with no zoning, do they still control how close you
I
can?
don't know how that works. I don't
You
think
can literally build right on the edge of your property. I just don't know much
I
about
know at Dover, they go off the town plan. They go off the philosophical statement. And somehow they make that binding.
Did you have, Jeanette, you had something you wanted to say?
Just more of a clarification back to the conditional uses, I think, going way back to the start of the conversation when the last board was sitting here, what was pointed out, which made sense to that board, was someone bought a property on Stigers Road, always was a residence, just like any of these other houses, they're all residences, and she has opened kind of a bed and breakfast or pop-up restaurant, if you will. Well, it was covered by B&Bs and inns, those are listed as conditional uses, it's just short-term rentals never was. And in some respects, they feel, although they don't serve food, they are renting space for people to sleep. So why wouldn't they need a conditional use permit if Christine and Jared had to get one to let people sleep under the roof of the building they own?
Yes. And that's where the state regulations would then step in for some of the concerns of the residents of Andover, because they have to then go to the state regulations on a regular rental, which is egress windows, hardwired smoke detectors, and that is because they're a business. When they turn to becoming a business, they have to follow stricter guidelines on the buildings.
So somebody, like say the gentleman who has a short-term rental who says it's an LLC, is he already supposed to be under a different category maybe?
Mhm.
Like even without us doing
I believe
anything?
he actually went through that stuff here at that meeting and said that he did the smoke detectors and had, I think he may have or tried to invite the fire marshal to just, so that he made his building up to what needed to be, and sounded like he did, but that was just him giving us that information.
Voluntary thing.
It sounded like he wanted to make sure it was, and he was one of the many people that have come, but he said he was all for if there was a fee or a registry, he said he would. I mean, that's one of our 20-something short-term rentals in the town.
Well, just out of curiosity, if say we put short-term rentals in as a conditional use into the town zoning, zoning, and then the townspeople voted the whole thing down, then what would we do?
I think that the step of putting it into the zoning is a conditional use, like Jeanette was just saying, that it's gotta go in there and it's gotta stay, because then they're operating legally. I mean, I know with zoning legally is a tough word.
Right, but what Susan's saying is,
Is it
so
good?
if you guys take it to the voters,
What
Is
if
the whole
they
thing
turn down the document,
then what would we
Is it-
then what?
then what would we do? We could just
I
leave
would-
it the way it is?
I guess that's what it would be, yeah.
Well, but
And that
you would then also be tossing out all of the statutory references that the attorney says needs to be in there.
But then it could be re-voted. I don't know,
We
anyway.
have a hearing, see what people's concerns are and adjust it and re-vote it.
Mhm.
You are correct, that's who, I've mentioned that before, that this could all go through with all this time and energy, and it could go to vote, and if it does not pass, it doesn't pass, it's back to not square one, but you know what people are for and against.
I mean,
And that's why we were
yeah.
trying to make it at the largest voter turnout we could,
Right.
was the idea, to get the best opinion from the town.
I personally have not been in a position to, like, have to apply for a building permit, but I know that, I think that I've understood from what you've been involved in,
Yeah,
observing construction and.
I did one for
yeah,
my house,
Yeah,
Yep.
but, so, does our zoning seem more picky than it needs to be, or did it all seem generally?
The stuff, like I said, just in the building, I thought it was fair.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a public notice of any building permit, they have to be posted for several, how many days it is? Is it 50? Yeah, 50.
I just
So
don't-
that
yeah.
if, same thing, if a budding landowner contests to what you're doing, or some other person, they have a chance to speak their mind, right?
Yeah.
To the zoning.
Okay, well, I think I said what was on my mind, and thank you.
Thank you.
So, going along with that, we have a municipal resolution for a planning grant. So we're trying to get some money to pay the lawyer to do this.
From the lawyer that we already
This is a state grant.
seen.
No, so this is, I don't know if you remember at the last meeting, Joe talked about municipal planning grants that are available. So his big question was, okay, so you have this thing that the attorney has made all these comments, who's going to sit down and write all this? Because it's kind of a
Yeah.
big job.
Yeah, it's too much to ask them.
So Joe reminded us that there are some planning grants out there right now available, and this resolution says you all would like to apply for a planning grant, and the Regional Planning Commission then actually can become the consultant that the town uses to put this document together that has all these comments and all this draft, and they said, you need to put this section over here, and to do, I believe, the Regional Planning Commission person, whoever that is, we'll do all of that, and then that's the draft with all those changes made that goes back to the planning commission.
So it doesn't pay for our lawyer, but it would pay going forward to revise the document.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be great.
And so that's what this, it's not a declaration, what did you call it, Chris?
Municipal resolution.
Yes. So if you all are of that mind, that needs to be read and adopted by you all before I can finish the paperwork and submit the paperwork to ask for that grant.
It says, whereas the municipality of Andover is applying for funding as provided in the fiscal year 24 Budget Act and may receive an award of funds for said provisions, and whereas the Department of Housing and Community Development may offer a grant agreement to this municipality for said funding. The municipality is maintaining its efforts to provide local funds for municipal and regional planning purposes, or that municipality has voted to an annual or special meeting to provide local funds for municipal and regional planning purposes. The legislative body of this municipality enters into and agrees to the requirements and obligations of this grant program, including a commitment to match funds. I believe that's 10%. Municipal Planning Commission recommends applying for said grant. It doesn't say which grant that is, but. You need an executive officer, appointing me to sign it, and Joe to sign
And then all the members,
it, and all the members on the
a
back.
quorum of the members at least. Yeah, that's what you have.
Mhm.
When I started filling this one in, if you all decide that that's what
I
you
think
want to do.
I think it's a great idea.
We definitely would like to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Is it too late to ask another question about the
No.
conditional use thing?
No.
If I can remember what it was. So I'm just trying to imagine a hearing before the zoning board. Somebody maybe who's been running a short-term rental wants to find out if they can continue, and neighbors come who feel that they've been that their privacy has been invaded or whatever. So the zoning board would not have to grant all the applications. Is that true? I mean, if the zoning board heard from a lot of neighbors that were vigorously opposed to it, they could deny the request? I mean,
I don't think so. They have to have really good grounds.
So
Probably
are there
not.
specific grounds like laid out somewhere, like,
I don't think so.
so,
Pretty much all they can do is put limitations on it. I don't think they can really deny it,
mhm.
because it is a conditional use. Just means that there's conditions applied to it. So that if the neighbors had certain concerns, they can put conditions on it
Mhm.
that address those concerns.
So if the neighbors knew from previous experience that people who were staying at this particular house, like threw trash on the road and made noises all night, and they came and vigorously attested to that, would that be enough for the zoning board to say? So in individual cases, they could say that you've abused this privilege in the past and you can't have one now? Okay.
There's gonna be some point where you find them, they didn't have to give them conditional use, but then you could fine them if they
Mhm.
violated that conditional use.
And if there's no ordinance to go along with it, it's kind of the Wild West as far as making up reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like,
It's very minimal
okay.
to put a conditional use.
I do know, again, back to the place on Steigers Road, one of the biggest concerns of the neighbors was how narrow the road is where that particular house
Uh-huh.
is. And so the zoning board did address, and they asked to see, they said, you need to bring a parking plan, you need to be able to have so many parking spaces. And that was written as part of their permit, was keeping the road clear of cars. And certainly if those are violations, they can be written up for that. I digress. Robin didn't know the meeting was tonight. Do you want her to drive over now?
Yeah.
Well,
Or are we almost done?
Always,
I'll ask her if she.
I'd say it's another half an hour probably.
It's up to her.
I'll ask her if she can.
So do we wanna make a motion and vote on this, or I'll sign it,
Wait, to vote on which?
the resolution to get the planning grant?
I'm sorry, which?
The planning grant that we were talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She's on her way.
I move that we apply for it and accept it if we get it. Is that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's gonna include the next steps on this, what we're discussing in the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is the
that's
next
the
step.
next, yeah. The next step in the process.
Thank you.
Planning grant. Road reclassification discussion.
So whereabouts at Arnold Wolf Road? Is it the whole the whole length of it? Okay.
Is that request coming from the road crew, from the campground, from the?
Road crew. The road crew.
From the road crew.
It's impossible to maintain the water.
And it partly because there's also a lot of flood damage that probably is
That's
that.
all repaired.
That's, so has the Holloway place been sold
It's
to?
under contract.
And they're requesting that it be plowed,
So,
but it has not been previously.
oh,
No, not in 30 years.
Yeah,
yeah.
but it is still,
It was plowed at one time, but the regulations for where you can put snow and stuff is different now. You just plowed it into the brook before.
oh, okay. So does
So,
that make sense? When it was plowed, they were allowed to push the snow into the brook rather, because
oh,
if you
and-
go up through there,
oh, and now we're not allowed, the state doesn't allow that,
well, probably,
right? It
This-
wouldn't
yeah.
be ecological. Well, so I think the last time we discussed this, maybe we were talking about another road that had been damaged, and I think, Jeanette, did you say when you had time that you might look at how many other roads in town, like, had somebody, the same owner on both sides and only one?
At one point, at
Just
the
the-
last meeting, you talked about roads that are in effect a public driveway
Yeah.
because they service one house.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have not put that.
That-
list
I-
together yet.
I
and
know
this
that you've been really busy.
technically is not that
Oh,
because
it's
the
not,
campground
'cause
is
the
inside
campground
of
owns
that
so
road,
much,
correct? Technically, there, Arnold, is that name that there's not one? I don't know how that falls
Well,
into that
You could throw it up and bridge out.
from the bridge out. Yeah.
So,
So it's, I just serve class,
3 now.
it is a class 3.
Yeah.
So class 3 has to be plowed, but class 4 does not.
and this is a class 3 road.
Yeah.
So, and this would be setting a precedent for other roads in town, technically.
And this is, I mean, this is its own specific example because like Chris said, it hasn't been plowed out there. Was it somebody that was away in the winter and
Yeah, they just didn't come up in the winter.
they didn't come up, so and now a new owner is requesting it be plowed, and
Do we
I mean,
know
that's
how
a-
much that would cost, even to just maintain the road for
Oh,
a year?
We can't.
it's
It's physically
it sounds like
impossible.
Charlie's saying that you
Oh,
can't.
it's physically
You
impossible.
can't.
Can't.
There's nowhere to
you can't
put
fit
snow?
a plow
Okay.
truck through
Okay.
there. And
So it's not a
there's-
matter of
There's not
money,
even
it's
a
just,
matter of, right, it's not even a matter of the town bringing it up to standards, it's impossible to do it.
Mhm.
You can't bring it up to a class 3 standard.
So it's not
With the new ditching regulations and stone line ditches and all that, there isn't room enough.
And a prior example is Parmalee Road was the reason why we let that road completely go, was because from a recommendation from the town, the road foreman was if that stayed a road and we had to bring it up to snuff with the ditches, how much money that would cost in the future.
So it's not actually setting a precedent for like other roads, really. It's
I
just
don't-
exercising our discretion as a select board if we so choose.
This would be, I feel this would be a discussion even if that wasn't previously mentioned, if that helps.
Mhm.
I think this is its own.
Would we feel obligated to talk to the buyers of the place so they know this?
The guys have already talked to them, told them it wasn't gonna get plowed.
Well, and they could be noticed, so if you remember, part of
We
the
have to do it.
declassification process is a public hearing.
And then a site
And-
visit.
Oh, I see, we can't just vote to do it, right? We could vote
Right.
to discuss,
We
to
can make
have
a
a
motion.
hearing.
You're discussing it
Yeah.
now, and then you can move to,
Have a
that's what you
public-
wanna do, and have the public hearing whenever at the next meeting. And then abutting landowners, current landowner, and certainly,
Other people in
Be
town that
courteous
feel
to-
threatened, yeah.
well, it's a public hearing,
Yeah.
so you can.
So what we did last time was we had the site visit at 5:30 and the meeting
Yeah.
at 6:30 so that they coincided. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
closer than the last one, it's right up
Yeah.
here, so.
You might have to go earlier, it's gonna be dark.
Oh, that's true.
It's, it's gonna be a very emotional issue, but yeah, I think we should have a hearing about it and move forward on it based on the road crews.
Well, the fact, I mean,
Recommendation.
if they say it's impossible to do, I mean, it is. I mean,
And the state regulations, I don't know who sent them, Megan, right? The state regs,
Yeah, or no, well, the guy she reached out to when I emailed him about that road in particular not being up to standards.
but it says if the road is not up to class 3 standards and it's impossible to get there, the state can actually come in and say, you're gonna declassify that road because we're not gonna give you any more
Oh,
funds
okay.
for it.
Yeah.
They're actually getting funds to plow that.
So we could actually, it could end up that the state would be the one taking the action, not the town.
and that's the previous example
Yeah.
off of Gates Road was
Yeah.
because that road wasn't passable and they wanted that section either brought back to standards or declassified.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I remember when I was a kid, at least our joke up on that side of the mountain, it was that the town was plowing out a railroad so that the oil truck could get up there to heat Claudio Arau's piano, because nobody ever went up there, but you know, it was a public road and that was our big joke.
Yeah.
So I get it. But yeah, it's a big deal in the country as to,
There are a lot of other roads that
yeah.
cost us a lot of money to plow, that
Yeah.
just driveways.
And the town is in a real fix with money. It's pretty scary what I walked away from the last meeting with. So what do we have to do? We just make a motion to have a hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we definitely should.
Is it light enough at 5:30 next 2 weeks?
Time's not gonna change this year.
No, but it should still be light enough at 5:30, right,
I think so.
for a site visit, because we have to do that first.
Right.
Yeah.
And then,
You can or you can do it a different day. You don't have to do them the same day. It just seemed like a convenient thing to do, to convene and then.
We're more likely to all remember it if it's the same day.
I felt like that worked well last time.
Yeah,
That time works for me, I don't know if it works for everybody else, but,
You can see an hour if we wanna walk out there.
yeah, so 5 then.
Yeah.
That's probably the earliest I could anyway, so.
so 5:00. Like what day? October?
We're here, October, so we're talking October 9th?
The 9th is our next meeting.
I think an hour would be enough time, just still light at 5:30.
So 5:00, you said?
5:30.
Yeah, everybody do it at 5, it's
Five-
gonna be.
Wait, what time? 5:30?
Because it'll be dark by the time we get done. By 6:30 it'll be dark. So 5:00.
5:00, yeah, any time is fine for me. So would we meet all the way at the house or just like more, are we
We at the campground.
at At the campground.
You know, I
And
don't
then
wanna
we
take
would
more than
just-
one vehicle out there.
And I think it'd be important to walk a lot of it to see that the fact that you can't get the snow anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Oh, it's a beautiful road out there.
and it would be a change to have it plowed. If I'm understanding it, for it to be plowed would be a change.
Yeah.
It has not been plowed, so that would be. So. We're discussing Old Gulf Road South. The new owners are requesting it be plowed, and it is still classified as a Class 3 road, and it is not possible to plow, according to the town crew. And it's obvious if you go out there, so we're gonna have a site visit next meeting, if that works for you, 5:30.
It works for
Or
me.
sorry, did you say
Sorry,
five?
I didn't
Sorry,
get
my
that.
apologies,
At 5
5
o'clock.
PM on the 9th.
5 PM on the night, okay.
Okay, can I have a pen? I'll write that down, because I didn't bring my bag either. Just raced here.
We're gonna meet at the campground,
Yep, that works for me.
right there. That works.
So if I'm in the parking lot.
And the public road ends a fair amount, because I've been out there, it ends a fair amount before their driveway.
Yes.
So, has that always been the case? It surprised me that it didn't go all the way right into the
No,
front
it's always
yard.
been that way.
Oh, okay.
In fact, they lost a big culvert on their side of the gate.
Hmm.
I don't know if they got it replaced it or not. We're just saying that ultimately, if we didn't do anything with that road, the state could come in and force it to be thrown up because
Right.
they can't make standard.
Mhm.
It's impossible, there's not room enough to ditch out the bank there and river on the other side.
What about on the east side of the river's on the west side, right, of the road?
Yeah.
But, and on the east side, is that owned by the campground, all the, I mean.
Some of it is,
But like, technically, if money is no issue, the road could be widened to the east? I'm not saying I'd wanna do that.
The slope was almost.
Oh, it's too much, I
It's
don't,
impossible to do it, that's
okay, cause it's not even flat.
right, there's
Okay.
no
Yeah,
place
I
to
don't
make the
remember
road
exactly.
bigger.
You run right on the bottom of the bank there, and the river's on the other side of the road, and it's barely 10 feet wide some of the way.
Okay,
And the landowners have requested to have it thrown up?
It's
No.
changing
it's
ownership.
under
It's
contract.
true.
No.
Okay.
Oh,
Very
It-
requested,
it-
wow.
The homeowners or new landowners are asking that it be maintained,
and,
and it's not possible. Is what we're getting from,
Mhm.
because there's nowhere to put the snow, and it's very narrow.
Yep,
And they
like-
require us to buy a snow blower.
And like-
And-
Tons of time up there.
yeah.
And like Chris said, if nothing happens right now, something will happen with the state, like it did on Parmley
Right.
Road, if I'm saying that right.
Mhm.
That was still needed, it has to be declassified, because they're not gonna give the funding if it's not being maintained in there.
So the plan is
And
to
a lot of
look
it's
at it
ditching.
and decide whether.
Yeah, we have to have
You have to come up
and
we
with
have
have to
a
have the
public
site.
hearing.
The site visit will be there, and then the public hearing will be here at our meeting.
And we don't know if the new owners are close enough to attend it.
They'll get a notice.
Would we make it available that they could attend by Zoom?
They'd
Or
have, for a site visit, they'd have to come in person, but they'll get a letter. So
I mean, I can set Zoom up
there'll
if they
be
can't,
notification.
right, so that they can, and they can also, write a letter, an email, or send a representative.
Okay,
Currently, the land trust actually owns it now,
Right, Vermont Land Trust is the current owner.
yeah.
so they probably send a representative down.
Yeah, and before that, she was like over 100 probably and just wasn't up here. So it's just not been maintained in modern history, I guess. I don't know.
I think we have a plan for that.
Road Commissioners report. They're hopefully gonna be paving the patches within 2 weeks. And the last Charlie heard, what day or when they got all the patches are prepped, ready to go, so they can just, you guys are a couple inches of pavement in. And other than that, the roads are mostly done, I think Lovejoy Brook is the only one that's left undone. Sean was up there from Crown Point, putting one, either today or tomorrow, he's putting in one culvert on Biancanella Road,
Mhm.
where the beaver pond is. Put a 4-footer in there, and they're still waiting on a 6-foot culvert halfway down on Joy. I was supposed to have been here last Wednesday, but I haven't seen it yet. But Bridget and I were talking about it earlier, and they may, if it doesn't come, they may just surface it down on Biancanella Road and close it for the winter.
Hmm.
The rest of the way down. No houses all the way to Spokeshire from there. And we got a request from Sally Picard at the bottom of Boynton Hollow to, what do they call that grant?
Oh, right, with that bridge.
Here's the, I don't know if you printed it out, National Watershed Protection
Yeah.
Grant, I think.
It requires us to be the sponsor of the job and come up with 25% of the money. And I went over and looked at it, and I don't see they're gonna do more damage to go in there and do anything than they are to leave it alone. They really didn't scour hardly anything off the bank, and
She's maybe asking for funds to remember how she wanted to like somehow rebuild the whole thing. She's probably asking for funds in anticipation of the next event is probably from her point of view, maybe.
she wants to, in her email, she said, I think it was to these guys, the brook was encroaching on her bridge and encroaching on the house. Well,
Yeah.
the arc of the river is going away from her house and didn't wash anything on it, the house side.
So we don't have to sponsor it if we
No.
don't feel that it really concerns the town.
No, I mean, it's there for landowners to have a serious issue, and it would also benefit the town to step in and do something, but I really don't see that.
Right.
You don't see in this
If we-
instance that fits the criteria?
If we sponsored it, it could cost us a lot of money, a big
I
percentage.
would,
Well, it costs 25%.
Yeah.
It may only be $5,000 or $6,000, but
Oh.
still.
But then we're opening up the idea of other
Yeah.
people
There
wanting
are
the
a lot
same
of
thing.
other
There's a
people
lot
who
of
live
people
along
who,
the river. The
Right,
guy
they
whose
have-
garage is falling in, he
Mhm.
originally talked about the same exact
Mhm.
grant. So if you do it for this one and then you do it for 6 more people, how much money are you
Right.
talking about?
and, I mean, 25% of something is something, and
Right.
where is this coming from?
We don't
Because
have
we're,
we don't have the money right now,
Yeah.
either way.
And whether you do it in-kind labor, you can do that, but you're still paying the guys
Right,
and they don't have the time to do it.
and the wear and tear on the machinery and
Right.
everything
It's,
else that goes with that.
I don't know, I don't see it's a good situation to open that box, I guess, that would be the,
I don't think, not for what she's gonna get out of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
think she's gonna,
It seems really curious to me that it is even offered through the homeowners. You'd think it would be offered for the towns, but
there's,
so the explanation for this would be that we don't see the benefit, because it has, like you said, it had to benefit the town, because putting up the 25%,
that, and
Right.
and it's
I
not,
honestly think she's gonna have more damage there.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to cut a whole bunch of trees.
and that's gonna cause more erosion, which
Right.
we've spoken about. Any of these trees that are holding these banks together should stay as long as they can.
Right.
Um,
The other thing is we could sponsor it. And it just mean I have to go out and show the engineer the job and he'd say no. But you still opening up a can of worms.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of that
I
because it.
Yeah.
And not that I'm saying the town doesn't wanna help out, but it's just not, it's not possible. I don't see that it's
And it's not possible
possible.
for other people as well. If we were to, I would really worry about
Yeah.
other people wanting us to do the same. And how do we say, okay, we'll do it for this one, but we won't do it for that one? And
I think the road
Um,
commissioner has a very good sense of where the town needs to be involved. And where the town needs to be involved, we have repaired and fixed everything without question.
Chris, will you be writing a letter to Sally?
Yeah. Do that. That's the goal of board.
I agree.
And the road commission's report down there. Financial orders,
The sand,
I'm saying.
I was just gonna check, update.
They started, our guy just started hauling some of it.
I thought so, I was wondering if that was sand,
Yeah.
So that people that bid on it were okay with that?
Yeah.
We're gonna do a little bit of both,
And so,
okay.
I didn't ask Charlie, but he said they hadn't turned, the company hadn't turned any yet.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I don't think they're making it as fast as if I remember.
Oh, okay. Well, at least we're getting some. We're getting some in. Some is here. So.
Financial orders.
What's this?
Oh, so those are both sections of the contracts that had another. This one is from Chuck's Property Service, and the other one's from Woodland Earthworks. We signed the other section, but
Yeah,
there
we
must have
just-
been a
we
back
missed-
page.
we missed.
for this.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
Jeanette, have we had to start borrowing money yet, or?
Not yet.
Well, Hector gets us some money before we go out.
I don't remember, Chris, did he say if we got the Cat B stuff in that they would start submitting that, or
I think
do
so.
they wait till everything?
No, I think he said as soon as you get something 100%, you submit it and they start the process.
Okay.
Oh, when the work is done to 100%.
So go ahead.
They have two categories. You have emergency work, just category B. So all of that's 100% done, so
So
we,
not that
as
thing.
soon as you get all the
Yeah.
credentials in for it, you can put that into processing. So we get, that's the bulk of the work, really.
To get the roads back open and
Yeah,
to passable.
so this is a larger chunk of money.
Yeah.
I think, maybe not.
Yeah.
No.
Is there any, when that gets submitted, any idea? Does anyone have any idea when
What timeline?
the timeline? Is it gonna be any time?
That's a good question. Oh, actually, Chris, don't you remember I asked him that specifically, and he danced around that question like
Yeah,
a
that's
pro.
exactly what.
Remember that, Chris? I
figured.
specifically, and I
answer.
didn't mask it with anything else. It wasn't a language barrier issue. I specifically said, Hector, how long does it take when this is complete to actually see some money? And he, boy, I don't know what he said, but it was smooth, and we looked at each other, and Chris goes, I don't think he answered your question. I said, no, he did not.
So where are we at now?
as of today, we've topped $600,000.
With that aggregate bill that I heard you said you opened, that one?
Yeah, those I went,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's gonna have to be a good discussion then, cause if we're getting to that number, there's gonna,
we're doing okay. So we have a couple of things that are gonna help us move along, continue to move forward without being in terrible shape. I would say, so many property owners paid their education taxes up front. The state doesn't ask for any of that money until December, and then doesn't ask for the second half until next June. So the money we collect in March, the state doesn't need from us or doesn't ask for until June. So usually what I do is put any of that money that's collected ahead of time in an interest-bearing account. So just FYI, last year we earned $12,000 in interest because of the money I put in that account and sat on until we had to pay it. So I plan to do the same thing. The money's in there. And so, and right now I haven't paid some of our, Chester's, our contract with Chester for, emergency services and things just came in, that's $80,000. But other than that, we don't have huge things really until we get into winter and then have to start, plowing and have overtime and salt and more salt expenses, that kind of thing. So, right now we're okay. The other thing, I'm gonna look again at the ARPA fund and what things can be paid for. So for example, we had paid for the heating of the town hall with that money in the past, so I'm gonna check on, since the money's here, isn't that something that would continue, because it really is an emergency operations center, or it can be an emergency shelter. So just little things like that can save us, $10,000 here or there.
Yeah. And we won't talk about government shutdowns and what that's gonna do with FEMA, so.
Ooh, I hadn't even thought of that. Chris, any word on the loader?
No. I didn't say anything about it. It's gonna be a good thing at this point.
Right, we still have, that money, not that we would mess with that money, but.
it was it October? Or was it September?
September,
It was
October.
September, October, so October, that's what that means.
Yes. They said they usually let you know
Yeah,
30 days ahead. So, looks like November. It's alright though, we got still runs and more hours out of it.
yeah, it's already technically traded in, so
Okay.
longer they take to get the new one.
I wonder if Scott would be interested in coming to the next meeting and giving us a report about the school.
I can reach out to them and ask. They have emergency meeting tomorrow, or unscheduled meeting tomorrow night.
Oh, that's what they decided to do.
Mm-hmm.
Have any correspondence?
I'll just tell him maybe we'll put it later in the agenda because of that extra part of the meeting next time.
Right.
I'll see if I can.
Nope, no correspondence. So I'm sorry, I'm just looking up a report and it doesn't look the way I expected it to. Oh, totally. So, I've been working with the auditor, or not the auditor, our accountant, which is what I do in September, October, to get ready for our auditors, the town elected auditors, to come in and go through the books. And we're still in the process of working on different accounts and making sure the money ended up where it was supposed to be between all the different bank accounts and things we have. But it does look like we had a surplus from last year, so that's good news. Right now, it's sitting at $30,000, but I can't guarantee that it will stay there. But I think it was almost 20 when I closed the books on June 30th. So anyway, that's a little bit of good news on the money front.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.